Internet baby.
What is the strangest thing that happened to you that you can't logically explain? This didn't happen to me, but actually is very strange. Read this, you will really think for a second over it. The legend of basketball Kobe Bryant was killed in a helicopter crash, and everyone was paying tribute to this legend. Until the tweet reads, Kobe is going to end up dying in a helicopter crash. November 14, 2012. Did you see the date of that tweet? Holy shit. Many people commented on this post, and have proved that changing date on Twitter through any third-party app is impossible, and if someone tries to do so, he or she will be banned from Twitter. Yes, predictions are the strangest things I've ever seen. We make predictions every day about certain things, but predictions about death and accidents truly give me goosebumps. Abraham Lincoln had several premonitions regarding his own death. A few days before he was killed, the 16th President of the United States told his bodyguard about a dream he had. He said he saw himself walking toward the White House until he met a group of cheerful people and a body surrounded by soldiers. When Abraham Lincoln, in his dream, asked the soldier who the lifeless person was, the soldier told him it was the President of the United States who had just been assassinated. The scriptwriters of the cartoon The Simpsons succeeded, not only in obtaining huge ratings, but also predicting a major event before it occurred. In 1993, an episode featured a tiger attack against Amos, Gunther, and Ernst, who were in fact caricatures of the illusionists Siegfried and Roy. The two were quite popular in Las Vegas for their shows wherein they had tigers disappear before the audience. In 2003, a tiger attacked Roy, putting an end to the duo's career. I don't know if they are truly made predictions, or are merely just a coincidence, but this blows my mind. Predictions are made after certain experiments, deep studying, some numerology and a lot of maths, but many of the predictions presented here do not certainly follow aforementioned criteria. This is confusing yet strange. Plus, this is not a kiddo thing to fascinate over. This is serious how people see their death in their dreams. Got a phone call from a voice I didn't recognize, an older woman who asked me how my son Sean was doing. My son's name is Sean, so I thought she must be a distant relative I just can't place. We talked awkwardly for a minute about our lives, catching up on how my sister Sasha was doing in school, and how my mother's surgery went. I mentioned my aunt and the woman became confused. Who? She asked a few more questions, and it became clearly obvious we didn't know each other at all. She had dialed the wrong number looking for her niece, and happened to reach a person with the same name, with a son named Sean, a sister named Sasha, that was in school and a mother who recently had surgery. I was camping in the middle of nowhere with my husband. We both woke up in the morning at exactly the same time, and both of us were seeming pretty startled. Me. I just woke up after hearing a doorbell ring. Him. Me too. I mean, it had to have been a dream, right? There's nobody or no buildings around us for miles. So, I decided to go on about the dream I was having. Me. I was dreaming we were at my parents' house and you. Him. Me too. I was spilling wine on your mother's rug. Me. Getting freaked out. Jesus Christ, and my father was there, and he was getting really irritated at you. Him. Yes, and I kept spilling more and more wine every time I tried to stop. This conversation went on for a few minutes. Everything he told me was accurate to my dream, and he said everything I told him was accurate to his. We described the same rug and my father saying the same things, being all irritated, but trying to be polite and understand that my husband wasn't trying to spill all this wine, but just couldn't stop. Very strange. I was at the bus stop, when an old man walking by stops, looks at me and says, "You like the naughty stuff, don't ya?" and leaves. I'm a guy. I'm too young to remember this, actually. But my mom always tells this story. Apparently, when I was younger, like barely able to speak, I was sitting on the floor playing with some toys nonchalantly with my mom, when I just said when I was in heaven, I met a woman who said you'd be the perfect mommy for me. I apparently held the belief that I was in heaven before being born, and an angel looked at me and chose the mom I went to. My mom asked me to describe the woman, and I apparently described my mom's great-grandmother perfectly, down to the eye color. I had never met my great-great-grandmother, nor seen a picture of her. In 1996, I had just dropped out of university, and was moving home to my parents' place. My tail was firmly between my legs, I had almost no money, and no job prospects. Basically, I was screwed. I had an old Jeep Comanche with all my belongings in the back, and 200 miles to go. I borrowed $20 from a friend for gas, and started the trip. I got to a point that was 30 miles from home, and was on empty. I pulled into a gas station rest stop and sort of cried for a minute in my truck. I needed $5 for gas to make it the rest of the way and had nothing. There was no way I could call my dad and ask for help. He was already so disappointed. After a minute, I started searching around my truck for change. Anything. I opened the glove box and there were these paper loyalty bucks for a gas station that I never used. It turns out it was the exact gas station that I was stopped at. $4.70 worth of bucks. I found another $2 in change, put $6 in the gas tank, and bought a Coke. I made it home. Fast forward 20 years, I had sorted my crap out, and I'm a lawyer. That gas station hired me as their outside counsel. I got to tell the story to the president of the company. When I was around 11 years old, I shared a room with my little brother, 4 years younger than me. One night, as if by fate, I wake up in a cold sweat with a sense of urgency. I dart for the light, turn it on, and look at my brother. I nearly shit myself when I see a black widow on his face. Don't know why I woke up, but I'm glad I did. And that's why I smashed my boot into his face, Mum. I got pushed off a train platform. I was tired and a bit strung out, had just done a long road trip for work. Did not see who did it, and I have no idea why. I was minding my own business, and next thing I know, I get slammed, and I am down on the tracks. Concussion, lots of stitches. And I get arrested for fucking up the train schedule. Charges were dropped, but it was a very weird day. This is why I always stand in front of a pillar, sign, or something else when at the train station, so nobody can get behind me and push me in front of a train. Either that, or I just stand far enough away from the tracks as soon as I see a train arriving. I was walking into a Walmart once, and this guy literally runs out of the store, does a cartwheel, and screams this thermos is the best ever, as loud as he can. I checked and it was a pretty bomb-ass thermos. Had 2 compartments, and it looked high quality. I understood his joy. A dog talked to me, in English. When I was 10, my parents and I went on a camping trip. We were next to a river, and my parents were fishing while I was stacking rocks behind them. I had gotten bored with fishing. I saw a dog in the trees and called for my parents, but they did not turn around and responded with something generic. The dog was looking at me, wagging its tail, and I distinctly remember it smiling, and while the memory I have is very eerie, it didn't seem so at the time. The dog then turned and walked back into the trees and I followed it. As soon as I got into the trees, the dog was standing before me. The dog asked my name, and while I should have been shocked, I oddly wasn't, and just told it my name. I asked the dog's name, and it said it did not have one yet, and I could give it a name. From here I don't remember all of the conversation, but I do remember that it said it lived there, and had a home at the bottom of the river. It asked me if I wanted to visit its home, and that's when I became scared, as if the bizarre nature of all of it was suddenly apparent. I said no, and the dog seemed surprised by that, and became persistent, and a bit aggressive. It was then that my father called, and the dog got nervous. I turned and saw my father, who was walking towards me only a short distance away, although his voice seemed very distant. At that point, because I was scared, I turned to walk back onto the beach, and only turned back to the dog once through the trees. I could see the dog running into the woods, already a good distance away. I told my parents about the talking dog, and they weren't interested, which frustrated me. But when speaking to them about it now, they say that they may have seemed uninterested, because at the time they did not know what to make of it, because they thought I was too old to imagine it, and the story itself made them scared. They also said that I told them that the dog didn't have a tail, but I do not remember that part. I do remember that it seemed to grow in size as I spoke to it. I did not see it actually grow, but I kept noticing that it was taller at different intervals as it spoke. It would ask a question, and when I would respond, I would notice that it was taller. It started with his head about even with my stomach, but by the time my father arrived, it was eye level with me. For those who want to know the location, this was at Yosemite National Park. I don't know exactly where we were though. I do not know if it was real. It seems impossible. But it seemed very real at the time, and I can still vividly see that strange dog and its eerie smile in my memory. This is the strangest thing that's happened to me that I feel like sharing to the public. It's actually happened to me many times. Too many times to just be a string of coincidences, I think. The most recent time was just last week. On Tuesday, when I was at work, I suddenly felt a weird sensation low in my throat. I'd never felt anything like it before. It lasted for about 30 minutes, then it just suddenly went away. I described it to my wife when I got home, and we decided that it might have been acid reflux, which I've never had, but she gets sometimes, so I should take an acid reducer before I went to sleep. I forgot to take it before I went to sleep, but the pain didn't come back anyway. Then, on Friday, I was FaceTiming my mother. She lives several states away and I hadn't talked to her for about a month. During our conversation, she mentioned that she had an endoscopy done that week. She hadn't told me that she was going to get it done. When I asked her when she had it done, it was at the very same time on Tuesday that I felt the weird, new sensation low in my throat. If this only happened once or twice in my life, I'd think it was just a coincidence. But it's happened dozens of times with different people who are close to me. My parents, wife, and my children. I get a sharp pain at the front of my mouth, like I bit myself, but I didn't. A few hours later, when I pick my kid up from school, I see they have a busted lip in the same spot. They fell and hit their face at recess a few hours earlier. I get a sharp pain in my ankle while I'm sitting at work. It lasts about 30 seconds, then stops. I can't explain it until about 30 minutes later, when I get a call from my wife. She tripped and rolled her ankle at work, and her friend is driving her to the doctor's office for x-rays on it. It wasn't broken, just sprained. Anyway, this is the kind of thing you don't really mention to people you know in real life, because they might think you're weird and slowly back away from you. It's right up there with I was abducted by aliens or I saw Bigfoot as far as strange things to admit to people. Once, my mom and I were driving to Las Vegas from Santa Clarita. We were just passing Barstow, and on the I-15. It was right about high noon and very hot. Not a cloud in the sky. She had a fancy Lexus at the time with a touchscreen console on the dash that could play DVDs while driving. I remember we were on a long stretch of road with a lot of space between cars on the highway. One minute we see nothing ahead of us, and then all of a sudden, a woman was walking across the highway right in front of our vehicle. My mom swerved behind her, and barely missed her. She pulled off to the shoulder, and we look behind us, and we see her go all the way across the highway, including westbound traffic. Then she turned around, and walked all the way across again. Each time, nearly getting clipped by an unsuspecting and oncoming car like ourselves. At one point, a semi-truck almost hit her head on, missing her by literally one step. Each step she took was a steady and confident step, looking ahead of her, and never batting an eye to any oncoming traffic. She was barefoot, mind you, and walking on the boiling asphalt with zero sense of urgency. So, my mom calls 911, we're directed to Highway Patrol. They say they've received numerous reports, and they're headed out to it. My mom decided, after hanging up, to slowly reverse down the shoulder, to get a better look, and see if she's okay. Yes, I know, stupid in more than one way. As we get to a spot behind her now, she's crossed the highway, and is now in front of our vehicle. This part I will never forget. The woman slowly turned her head and looks at us, and is now slowly but steadily walking towards our car. She was white as day in every way. White nightgown, pale, dry, wrinkled skin, white hair, and the palest bluish-gray eyes I've ever seen, and barefoot. Almost looked like a Walking Dead version of Rose Dawson from Titanic. I was in the passenger seat, which was on the shoulder. When my mom made eye contact, she froze. Absolutely shut down. I remember the woman walking so close to my door, I could see her eyes make contact with mine. It looked as if she was blind and lifeless, but could not just see me, but see into and through me, like into my soul. I went cold immediately. She reached for my door handle, and I remember screaming at my mom to punch the gas, and without hesitation, she came to quick, and we peeled out of there. In the back window, I saw her watch us speed off, and then continued across the road again. A mile down the highway, we called Highway Patrol to see what happened, and they didn't have a clue what we were talking about, and said they got no reports of a woman crossing the highway. My mom to this day still doesn't remember the time between when we reversed to when we dipped out. I have no idea what happened that day, except for what I witnessed and experienced.